The biggest question we've heard over the last few days is it's not the law, it is the law. We have to do what the law is saying. And there's one law here which says in 77 they wrote the law, utilities must mark out facilities. And that's all there is to that. In Canada, they've extended it or give plans or information to help find the facility. So how do we work with the law, with technology? Why can't I pass the responsibility to locate to a contractor that's registered and the liability and everything is passed to the contractor, excavator, at the same time as I pass it to any of my third-party locators? I can do that transaction by transaction.
So what is that from me and MPL's perspective? Like my first reaction is I don't want that as an excavator. Do you guys agree with that?
In terms of emerging technology, that's just all part of the greater collective, right? So you have culture, regulations, emerging technology, best practices. And they all have to weave together. The issue with what you're proposing would simply be that it sounds great that we'll pre-select contractors and they'll have to set a certain level of standard until that pipeline starts flowing in the manner that you suggested. And then people will want more. So in terms of reducing damages, we're actually going to create more fluid excavations. So I don't think it's a bad idea. I think that we have to be very careful about which cultures we introduce that to, right? Because we're in the damage prevention community, that's why we're here. So if you give the work to us, it's going to be done properly. If we get the ability to locate our own marks, we're going to do it properly. But this is the social club for the saints. We need to address the hospital for the sinners. So how do we bring everyone in the fold? How do you get to that pre-selection criteria? And it's got to be through culture. And unfortunately, very hard to be prescriptive about culture, very hard to measure. But that's the crystal ball. That's where the future would be in damage prevention is how do we standardize culture so that we can weave those emerging technologies and those best practices in order to reduce the damages.
And why don't you want it?
There's so much that I have to deal with already. It puts another administrative burden on me.
But if it made you money, would you do it?
That's easy to say.
But it's been proven.
Here's an opportunity for you to make money. That's like me saying, you can make money at excavating. You don't know how to excavate. You're not going to make money.
But what about the other way? Do you lose money because of locating?
Yes, it's part of the business, but like I said, and I think me and NPL, who do a lot of work in the city of Chicago, agree. I think our companies have built processes in place where it's about as smooth as you can get from an excavator. Would you guys agree with that? I mean,
It's improved over the last 10 years.
It has greatly. It just makes me nervous. Like it's just another. Now I have to build a business now in terms of locating.
We've gone to the expense too of supplying our guys with located equipment also. To hopefully verify if there's any other abandoned lines in there, and also we use it for depth because the law doesn't require any depth. But we use it internally to save a few minutes if we can establish the depth with our personal locators. So we've gone to some expense, and I think the showing here has shown that we've taken the interest here another level. So we still have our bad hombres in the excavating world that we're trying to police inside, but there's still some bad facility owners that would rather litigate these things than put the time and money in to locate or dig up old records or see what they can find. It's still a struggle for us.
Do your crews carry locating equipment that you use, or do you rely on third parties, or how does that?
So we rely on third parties to do all of our locating. However, the bulk of our crews do have individual locators. And again, they just use that to verify. So if they're going off and they feel that something's not right, they can use that to kind of trace it, track it. Generally, our board crews use those a lot. Then it, again, just helps them verify, go a step above and beyond to try to, maybe understand why this locator is running this way as opposed to this way, how it should be. So they'll use that just as a tool to help them verify and try to avoid hitting stuff. It's not, like you said, it's not exact, but it at least gives them a better frame of mind, a little bit at ease before they go ahead and put that drill head in the ground. That's a great idea.
Having excavators verify the lines can lead to a lot of other issues too. Usually if an excavator is verifying lines, like you said, it might be in power mode or radio mode or some other technique rather than direct connection to isolate a facility. So if they're trying to verify lines by just passively sweeping a device in the area, they might be picking up another line that isn't the target line that we painted. And if they go further to where they're putting paint on the ground to try to keep track of the tones that they're getting, and then something ends up happening in the end and we come back out to look, then there's confusion about who put down what paint and whose marks are whose and who's responsible for what. I think in the big picture, it would be better to not verify and call back to the one center and have the locators come back out to verify the marks. But I know, again, that's time, right? Because if you have to call back into the call center, then you have to wait for a guy to come back out and run through his routine to verify. So it's a balance between the time that you spend either waiting to get a locator out there or the time that you spend verifying it yourself.
We're trying to establish and maintain the relationships with these utility companies and the locators. Our foremen, they all get the locator's name and number. Hey, can you come back here? This doesn't look right. They'll come back, they'll help them out before we go and call it in. Let's verify that this is right. Your mark's in the right spot. So it's those personal and professional relationships that you establish that I feel some contractors don't take the time to do or may not see value in it.
I think just on a base level, one thing that we do well is we've understood that all the parties involved have a financial incentive. They have a financial piece in it. So like locating companies who tend to butt heads with excavators, like we've tried to build relationships with them because we understand they have to make a profit too. Utility companies have to make a profit. So I know things that we've done, we've partnered with utility companies and partnered with locating companies to where we show them if we find a unmarked utility of theirs, then we'll call them up and let them know so they can put it on their maps. Things that we go above and beyond. I think the more we communicate with each other between those groups, like they reciprocate with us too, it makes our job easier. Your goals start to align a little more when you understand financial incentives in everybody. I mean, we are public organizations. We have to make money. You start here, and here's where you want to be with utility damage prevention. When you get here, you're moving. It's just a fine-tuned machine, and you're making money because it's an organization that everybody knows their role, everybody knows their process. It's smooth.
Just from listening to previous discussions, I feel on the locator side, the biggest complaint is a lack of understanding of what volume and what their resources that they're going to need to have are. So it sounds like that by far that's their biggest issue. Contractor, the biggest issue is I want to dig and you have requirements that are preventing me from digging. And you have these two different groups that have these issues, and as an industry, what we're trying to do is collect all the information we can about underground utilities. So when you have these three different groups having three different interests, I think we can align those interests by saying we have certain contractors out there that we know and we trust. They're qualified to go out and do their own utility designation, whether they do it in-house or they do it through a private locator. You empower those guys to work as work happens in other countries where excavator, you're responsible, we'll give you a map, you're responsible to doing your own excavation. So now what we do is through some policy, some way, we enable during these peak times when the locators can't come out and handle the volume of work that's out there, we allow these pre-selected excavators to have an advantage in the industry by being able to go out and mark their own sites. But in return, you have to give us as-built information about everything that you encounter and all utilities that you cross, which you would never do in a million years because it's just a hassle. I'm putting in a gas pipeline, why do I need to tell you about electrical lines? So you give him an incentive, he can get out there and do his work quicker. You help the locating industry because you're helping them deal with those peaks, and we're gathering more information to help the overall locating industry. And it would have to happen on a state-by-state basis, but it's definitely something that could be handled.
We talked about keeping government out of it as much as possible. this industry really isn't going to change unless they're forced to change. I mean, like Jimmy was saying yesterday, the system's broken. Where's the standards? Who's making these rules, and what can we do to move it in our direction compared to them telling us this is how you have to do it? So we have to maybe lobby differently or come up with a good case that say, hey, this is a better way to do it, and present a case study or something like that. But unless we all get on the same page, it's just going to continue going the same ways.
One of the things that I've heard is that, one of the issues that we all have with each other is the sharing of data. I think until we can all challenge our own philosophies about that and understand, and I think this event is a perfect way for us to understand what our philosophies, how they impact each other. And just like we were doing down here, challenging the philosophy about, excavators don't locate, I think that those are the types of things that I think we're gonna have to do to move forward.
I think there's been discussion about looking at, outside of the US, what do other countries do and how does it actually work? And what are the damages that are incurred as a result of how they do it? There's numerous examples of how things are different outside of the US. I mean, Japan has got their own system, and they undertook this massive project to kind of map cities because that's where a lot of construction is, and that's where a lot of conflicts are, and a lot of potential damages and a lot of potential liabilities. So I think looking at what the rest of the world is doing and really opening up to that and picking what is the best type of solution and kind of cherry picking what you want to create the new solution. Because we have to look at this as we have what we have, what would we ideally like, and what changes can we make to marry the two to create a better system for the future.
I listen in best practice for the CGA and listen to them discussing private and public property and a gas pipe that when it crosses into a private boundary, all of a sudden I have to go and look after this locate myself as a private company. And I say, when did the gas realize it just changed from being public to private? When did that pipe realize it changed from being public to private? If a guy can locate them in private, why can't he locate them in public? It's the same guys. I mean, the Bloodhound guys are out here doing private stuff, and yet they could do the stuff in the public arena as well, but we won't let them because the utilities, no, that's my arena. So let's give it back to the guys who actually put the shovel in the ground.
You think that would lower damages, or is it just an
Absolutely will.
efficiency thing?
Absolutely will. There was a gentleman sitting in the audience said today, I've got staff on my team, and since I've had staff on my team, we've lowered the damage rate. Because if you have locators dedicated to your team, why wouldn't you lower the damage rate? They're there, they're working with you side by side. In Australia, New Zealand, and places like that, the locator's on the team. He's one of the team. He's there working with you, not waiting another day for him to come back to do a remark. So we talked about gold shovel before. So certain contractors today are gold shovel. Don't they get certain sort of work? They're certified to a certain level and they get certain contracts, and other ones that don't. But why couldn't you have that standard across locating excavators?
And we have it in Canada with the alternative locate agreements, where because of our certification, because of our safety program, we get a letter for X period of time that says hydrovac is an alternative locate agreement. So we make the call so that the utilities know we're excavating, but the minute we hang the phone up, we can go to work. So I agree, I think certification and having it as an in-house team, because now there's accountability with our own part of the team being out on the project, making sure it's done right.
Is there any excavators in here?
Over here, yes.
Okay, so how do you feel about that?
Well, there's a couple things, and we're fortunate at Q3, one of our biggest customers, we're required to do our own locating of that gas and electric, and we work for that customer. The depth reading benefits us tremendous. Now again, we have 8 locators, they're not running tickets. They're assigned to those underground crews, and they will work with them and they will supply depth all day long, but there's a common understanding. Again, it's our locator and it's our underground foreman. They'll give them the depth and they'll stand right there and work with them. It has saved us countless damages where the locator has said, I'm reading this gas main you're looking for at 3.5 feet deep, and we find one that's been abandoned at 2 feet deep. And they're standing there saying, you know what, that's not it. Where in the past, if that locator hadn't have stood there, we just said, okay, we found the gas main, we'd have dug down and we'd have cut the live one. So it's benefited us tremendously. But again, it's a different world. Our locators don't have 100 tickets a day to run. It's part of our contract. They're dedicated to those foremen. So if they spend all day working with one foreman, that's their job.
We have a system in place to electronically track all of our utility contacts throughout the year that we put in place last year. It's been in full effect this year. We don't have a single injury as a result of a utility contact. I've worked for Meade for 10 years, just shy of 10 years, and I'm not aware of a utility contact incident that occurred that resulted in an injury.
For us, nationwide, in the last 10 years that I've been there, we haven't had any injuries either, but I think we have had contacts, obviously, with gas and electric, and each one of those carries the potential for catastrophe. But we've done a lot, and so it's not outside of the system. It doesn't matter to me if that locator is USIC or contractor or whatever. If they can locate, they can locate, to your point. So shifting the responsibilities is probably not the biggest bite we can take out of damage prevention, certainly when it comes to worker safety, because we still have today marks on the ground and people still digging over the marks and hurting themselves or destroying property. And that's where high-level contractors, we've taken it upon ourselves to install those best practices, to make sure we have training, to make sure that we have rewards and discipline, because those are two sides of the same coin. If you just keep beating people down, you'll have the same amount of damages, you just won't know about half of them. So we have to reward those good excavators. We have to reward those good companies that are doing the best practices.
You tell me the best performing state in the US today for damages. Who's the best performing state? No one can answer that question. Seriously, no one can answer that question. So I go, well, okay, I'll tell you New Zealand's better performing than the US, damage ratio. So the system must be better, but I'm talking out of my ass because I don't know. Because once again, it's so hard to compare data to data. Environmental, right? Like I said, we're not seeing one state that's so bad that we're all going, wow, that state is, you can't do that system. They all think they're doing well, and everybody looks at it and goes, wow, there's all reasons why that state's not doing well, and this one's doing a little bit better, or looks like it's doing a little bit better. I mean, California looks in dirt like it's doing fantastic. It's green. I can tell you it's not doing fantastic. It just doesn't report the damage. So it's green, but it's like, you know, so the data is so important. Hence, I'm interested in data for New Zealand, for Australia, for UK, for Ireland, for all these countries, so I can say, working with dirt, we're going to find the best system in the world, and I think I might know where it is, but I can't prove it. And then we'll prove it, and then maybe we'll get, here's a change. We've got to pivot, guys.